Welcome, welcome. There we go. Welcome to the Webinar Talk Show. My name is Tom Singer.
And I'm Liz Green. And as always, we're so excited to have amazing guests to come on and talk with us. And you know, Tom, in this world of virtual, sometimes we have teeny weeny little technical difficulties, but this is why you have to work with people who can roll with the flow, right?
Absolutely. You know, sometimes maybe your live talk show starts a few minutes late, but you know what? You just say, oh, well, and you get it going. Because as we say, the show must go on.
Indeed.
And today I'm really excited because we have with us a guest who I met almost a year ago at the National Speakers Association Winter Conference. And we had a long kind of one of those hallway conversations, which we all remember live events. The hallway conversations were some of the best things that could happen. And I really remember saying, wow, that is somebody impressive. And I wanted to keep in touch with her. And then 2 weeks later, an international pandemic hit. So I didn't really keep as in close touch as I had planned, but you and I had the opportunity to interview her in July for the National Speakers Association conference. And I knew at that point we had to have her back on the show. So today we have Angelique Rewers. And Angelique, so what she does is she trains Davids how to beat Goliath. I just love that. That is like so cool because she and her team, they know what buyers want when even sometimes the buyers themselves don't know. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. So Angelique Rewers, welcome to the Webinar Talk Show.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be on with you guys. Thank you for rolling with me as we work through some of those technical issues. You know, it happens to even us seasoned pros every now and then.
It does.
Absolutely.
Our theme for this, our second season, and we're getting very close to the end of the second season here, is don't cancel your event. One of the best interviews Tom and I did for the NSA sessions was yours because you were one of the people who gave us hope about the future of events, and particularly the future of corporate events. For those of us who are in the meetings industry that maybe are looking at the end of this year and are a little exhausted by the slog that has been, is there hope? Is there hope for events in the future?
Oh my gosh, there is so much hope. So first, I just want to say congratulations on coming up on your second season of this amazing show, and just the guests you bring and the energy and just the elevated conversation you guys are always having. So I'm going to answer this from two different directions. We hosted a conference this year, a 700-person conference for experts who sell to corporate. It was the largest event that we've ever done. Typically, we've been around 400 or 500. This year, we had over 700 from countries all over the world. We had leaders from Coca-Cola and AT&T and Accenture and UPS and Virgin Unite and the Association for Talent Development and others that came in to speak. And, you know, what was so amazing about that 3-day event was that even though we would have loved to have been together in person, we actually learned a lot about how to do a virtual event that we're actually going to take forward into our conference next year. So I think there were a lot of lessons. Necessity is the mother of invention. And so I know, right? So I know that we had so many great lessons this year. But when we look forward, there have certainly been, you know, naysayers out there, doomsdayers out there talking about sort of the death of events and et cetera. Nothing could be further from the truth. By the way, there was also an article talking about the death of the lipstick industry because we're all wearing masks. Lipstick is not going anywhere, okay?
It is not going anywhere.
It was not going anywhere. The second that we can all not wear masks, there's going to be a lipstick boom. But here's what we know. Senior leaders at major companies are not only predicting a tremendous turnaround and comeback in 2021, but their predictions for how soon it's happening almost categorizes it as not even being a prediction. And here's what I mean by that. almost 50%, I think the exact number is 47 or 48% of Fortune 500 and Global 2000 CEOs are saying that their revenue will be back to pre-pandemic levels by the end of January. January 2021, not January 2022. About half are saying their revenue is going to be back, you guys, by the end of next month. Then 2 out of 3 are saying they will be back to pre-pandemic levels by June. They're also saying that their big concerns are recapturing market, re-engaging with their customers, their clients, and their employees. They're also saying that they're going to need outside resources because they suspect that their revenue is going to come back a lot faster than all of the hiring. So if you're a speaker, if you're a service provider into the event space, if you are someone who sells services to companies that's going to allow them to mobilize people, human beings, whether those are customers, clients, vendors, consumers, employees, or the community, this world was made for you. So to me, the glass is more than half full here. And it's really about understanding how to take advantage of those opportunities.
So Angelique, what are your clients, the big companies that you work with, that you teach people to sell to? What are the big companies saying as far as events? Are they as hungry as the association world is to get back to live in-person events?
This is where, when you were introducing me and you were talking about kind of how we sort of sometimes understand their behavior better than them. If you ask them that question, they're not thinking, oh, we can't wait to get back to events. What they're thinking is, we can't wait to re-engage our employees. We can't wait to re-engage our customers. We can't wait to be able to find out what's on the minds of our clients and our customers, because we've got to deal with the changes that have happened for them. So they're thinking in terms of what their outcome and their goal is. And so, we have to understand that mentally they don't think, oh, well, we have to have events to do that. What's going to happen is, as they're having conversations with their own team saying, how are we going to adjust to all of these changes? How do we make sure they're now buying from us? How do we figure out how to adjust our marketing to meet our customers' needs? They're going to say, well, we better put something together. We've got to do something. And then the event comes into the conversation. So we just have to understand kind of like the thought pattern of those decision makers, because if you ask them a point blank question, they're going to say no. If you ask them the real question, which is, do you want to be the first there before your competitors? Do you want to know what's really going on? They're going to say yes. And the sales teams and the marketing teams are chomping at the bit to engage in a new way. Everyone is burnt out on Zoom. Right? We all have a Zoom hangover. It's like the biggest hangover of 2020 is going to be staring at our computers, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's exactly why Tom and I do what we do, is the same old, Stacy last week talked about, we're literally in these little boxes. If we're just doing the same old, it's not going to work. It's not engaging. So as we move forward, what's your prediction about what's the hunger going to be for?
I think that the biggest hunger will be obviously from a revenue generation standpoint. Every company is going to look at about 50% of buying decisions in the corporate and B2B space were put on hold this year. That's a lot to have about 50%. So as that starts coming back, right, you have to run to the point of the field where the opportunity is going. You don't want to be there after the ball's already been there. So, a lot of companies are looking at, how can we position ourselves to take advantage of the recovery? How can we be out in front? And I think that's really the message for speakers. If you're looking to get booked, if you're an expert that's looking to sell services, you want to talk about making sure that your clients and the communities that you serve are the ones that have the competitive advantage to be able to take advantage of those opportunities as they come back. I also think one of the other big, predictions that we have about next year is that most of the predictions about what wasn't going to return will be wildly off. If anything, it's just going to be delayed. It's just going to be the ramp up time, because if you decide to have a conference right now, you need a lead time to do it. If you decide to have an event time, you need a lead time to do it. And I think that, you know, when you look at what some of the experts were saying, that it was a long shot, that we'd even have a vaccine that was even 50% effective by the end of this year. Right. And here we are on the cusp of not just really one rolling out today, literally in the United States. A second one will be approved likely by the end of this month. You've got 2 more coming. You have the UAE and others, Russia and China and all parts of the world really moving forward with vaccines. And we have to look at human behavior, you guys. I mean, I think this is one of the things where people say, I always say, look, buyers are liars, right? People say they're going to do one thing and they do something completely different. Human behavior is actually not that hard to predict sometimes. If you take something away from people, if you deprive them of something, they just want it more. So And so is there anyone alive right now who's saying, I can't wait for more Zoom events next year? Like, who is saying that? Who is saying that? People are hungry to see people they haven't seen in over a year. They are hungry to have those hallway conversations. Again, I don't know that we're going to be hungry to shake hands again. That was always kind of a grindy habit. So, like, how are you? Nice to meet you. Like, I don't really, you know, I'm okay giving up the handshake, but I think the bigger human connection, humans are tribal, humans are social, humans thrive on connection. We're actually seeing all sorts of challenges this year from people who've been isolated. We're not meant to be isolated. We're meant to be together in community. You take that away from people, they're just going to want it more. And hopefully maybe they'll even appreciate it more. Maybe they'll actually even understand the value now of getting on that plane, buying that event ticket, buying that conference ticket to be there, because they realize now what they've lost. We took events for granted. We took events for granted.
We did.
So do you think that there are certain topics that corporations are going to be hungry for when it comes to speakers and consultants?
Yeah, I mean, over 96% of leaders right now are saying that their biggest concern out of this year is the mental health of their employees. That is encouraging. That's huge. Another issue that came up this year is that leaders now see their employees differently and employees see their leaders differently, because we've all looked into everyone's living rooms and home offices, and we've seen each other with sweatshirts and cats jumping on our desk and little ones running into the office. And so there was a human connection that was made. And we heard this from all over the world. We heard this from business leaders in Europe. We heard it from Asia. We heard it from Australia, New Zealand. We heard it from Canada. We heard it across the United States. So there's a human aspect. We've been talking about things like there's the 100% Human at Work initiative, for example, and others that are called Work Human and things like that. The humanity came back. So anything related to that. Another one is around diversity, equity, and inclusion, of course. But at the same time, I would encourage people who really aren't experts in that not to sort of jump on that bandwagon. But
yeah, many times here.
I think no matter what the topic is, if you're not actually an expert, don't just say, that's a popular topic, I'm going to chase it.
Amen. Like, amen to that, right? Because also you don't want to just go speak at an event and not have a back end of something to continue offering to that organization. Right. That's insane. You put all that energy and money into, you know, getting that speaking opportunity. You want to take your message as transformation beyond the stage. And of course, that's where some significant revenue is as well. So those are some big ones. Environment is going to be huge here in the United States because we have a new administration coming in that will be prioritizing not just diversity and things like women in leadership and diversity in leadership, but we're going to see certainly a return to environmental concerns. But I think the one that everyone's missing is that new market opportunities have opened up. We were just talking to a major manufacturing company, one that pretty much everybody would recognize. And, you know, their biggest thing right now is that because of the pandemic, what their corporate customers want to buy in terms of products has actually shifted. And so that requires retraining employees, creating agility, creating responsiveness, problem solving, resilience, re-energizing, being willing to not be attached to old paradigms and old ways of thinking. So I think mindset is going to be massive in 2021. All flavors of mindset will be massive, but companies, their biggest challenge next year will be imagine getting 100,000 employees who are all headed in one direction to now shift directions and head in a new direction. That's a big challenge.
That is a big challenge. So we really think about our meeting professional colleagues and our HR professional colleagues when we're inviting guests on the show. And so it's sort of like the twisting around what you just said in terms of maybe, our people who are planning corporate events don't even really know what they need yet. So how do you guide that experience? So like actually what you need is mindset, because you can't do what you want to do until you shift that.
Yeah. I mean, a big part of it is in your line of questioning, right? I have to say, so we work with small business owners, consultants, speakers, et cetera, to really train them and mentor them and consult with them in selling, those being the Davids, selling to the Goliaths. And one of the things that we sort of try to break people of is the idea of going into one of those conversations and just kind of poking the decision maker, whether that's in HR, or corporate event planning, or corporate communications, and just poking at them until you find a problem to solve. But don't do that. But once they do have a problem or an area that they're looking for help on, there is a line of questioning to really get to the underlying core issue that they need to talk about. And a lot of times they don't recognize what that is. So it is a patience and an importance of asking and sort of leading them to that discovery versus getting into a situation where you find yourself trying to convince a decision maker. If you find yourself where you realize you're trying to convince somebody of something, you've already sort of lost the conversation. So you want to make sure you're asking questions to the effect of, what do you think your employees are thinking? What do you think your employees are feeling? Where do you think they're going to run into resistance? And when the decision maker starts to articulate it and really ponder it, and I think that's one of the things that you have to understand when you're talking to decision makers. They haven't really planned for the conversation with you. They haven't taken an hour to sit quietly and think. They are in a constant reactive go, go, go mode. They are jumping from activity to activity, conversation to activity, conversation to a conversation. And the biggest thing they do is they parrot back to the outside consultant or speaker or what have you, what everyone is saying. It becomes an echo chamber inside their organization, and they start repeating things that they hear their bosses and their peers saying without consciously accepting or rejecting that idea. And so you're in a situation where they're parroting something to you, and then you're wanting to please them, so you're nodding along and you're accepting it as truth. But really, the best gift that you can give that head of HR or head of corporate meetings or events, or like I said, the corporate communications folks, is to say, okay, well, let's explore that a little bit. Have you asked employees about this? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? And then even sometimes adding in a discovery phase before you put that speaking proposal or other proposal in front of them. Not always. You have to read the situation accurately, but there are times when it makes sense to slow it down and say, have you had a chance to quietly sit and think about this? Could we do that now? Could we just talk it through? And that's about being confident, poised, in control of those conversations.
So are you saying, to some level, if we're going to sell to these big companies and we're the David, we're the little guy, sometimes we need to challenge Goliath a little bit. Is that what you're saying?
Almost always you need to challenge Goliath a little bit, because otherwise you have the tail wagging the dog, which is not good for anyone. And we know that most decision makers are actually dissatisfied with the purchases they make from outside consultants licensed coaches and speakers and trainers and service providers. There's a real gap there between what they're hoping to get and accomplish and what they actually get and accomplish. And they're a big part of the problem. It's mostly their fault. But the way to interrupt that is to create that sort of pattern interrupt and say, let me walk you through how we're going to have this conversation, and tell them before you get into the conversation how you're going to have the conversation. Start maintaining some control, regaining control of those conversations, and really planning the adequate amount of time, making sure you're never walking into those conversations without asking enough questions ahead of time. There's nothing that I want to strangle my clients more about, and they know this, than someone reaching out to them, inviting them to have a conversation with their organization, and them just agreeing to it. Instead of saying, great, but before we schedule it, I have a few questions so I'm adequately prepared for that conversation. People are afraid to say, great, and let me tell you what our process is going to be. I have to ask you some questions first. We have to have a pre-call quickly so I can better understand what our goals are at that, that meeting.
Right. You
never want to walk into a meeting and go, well, I'm not really sure what they want to talk to me about, but I'm excited. I don't know, but there could be not a great surprise waiting for you. So maybe you should check that out first. So, I'm being a little facetious, but I mean, it's crazy to walk into a meeting like that. It's so hard to get to the meeting. Do you really want to walk in unprepared? That doesn't make sense to me.
That makes a lot of sense to me, what you just said. And I think especially now, getting a phone call is pretty darn exciting. It takes a moment to sort of step back and think, oh, perhaps I should be strategic about this. Perhaps I should actually use the process that I said I was going to use. So that's excellent advice.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, I think part of one of the things we can do as part of our entrepreneurial maturity is not let a prospect or a client's sense of frantic energy or disorganized thinking then corrupt or corrode our own. And we see that happen where we, really were very reactive to the energy and the headspace that the decision maker is in. And I bet if a lot of your listeners to the show would go back and think about some of their most frustrating experiences where they've put together a proposal and it went nowhere, I bet you in over 80% of those scenarios, they were being overly reactive because the organization reaching out to them was in a sense of panic, franticness, urgency. We have to, we need this right away. And usually, it doesn't work out so well.
So, Angelique, most of my business, about 80%, was with associations, both medium size and some larger corporate-oriented business, industry groups. Yep. And those groups have been hit really hard, whereas your stats are showing that corporations are about ready to get back their profit levels.
That's right.
So how does someone like me, if we have speakers and consultants who will listen to this, on the replay, how does someone like me reposition themselves to be able to sell to more companies who have the budgets? How do you know who to call? How do you know which companies need to have a great speaker or MC? Where do you even start?
Yeah, I mean, so all of our clients at the Corporate Agent probably get sick and tired of me saying this, but rule number one is follow the money. Like that is rule number one in business, okay? Is follow the money. So I'm glad you're asking that question because that's exactly what you want to think about. You have to understand that associations will really be the last to come back because they need all of their member companies to come back, right? They need they need membership funds to come back. They have a longer planning timeline to try to line up hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands or tens of thousands, CEC, for example, tens of thousands of members. So they have a longer runway to recover. Companies, on the other hand, can choose to have an event on their dime out of their marketing budget and invite their customers. And we already have some of our corporate side and our mid-market companies lining us up for the fall for certain things. So follow the money. I think one of the best things to understand is that you need to really adjust your message to them specifically, to their industry specifically. So you've got to go look at what's happening in that space. And you have to also adjust your message to what would be their highest priority stakeholders that they would invest dollars to bring in speakers for. And those are going to be their customers, their user conferences, their customer events, expanding customer markets, and the other are going to be their employees. And so if you're going after corporate, you want to think about the employee audience and you want to think about that customer or that client audience. Now, you also have to make sure you're not only talking to the event team. You want to be talking to corporate communications, which gets overlooked so often. Yet corporate communications are the ones who are, so the vice president of corporate communications is responsible for making sure that all the employees in the entire organization understand the key drivers of the company, the vision of the leadership team, and how they can support that vision, what their role is, and how they can support that company's turnaround vision. And sometimes that goes into also caring for the employees from that emotional well-being, that mental well-being place, health, wellness, all of those things. But the big thing will be getting employees back focused. We're about to head into major disruption, because companies are going to have this situation where you have some employees working from home, some returning to the office. Some companies are looking at downsizing office space. Some companies are looking at reorganizing. So there's mass disruption, and they've got to keep their employees focused. It's going to be more disruptive. Let me say this. This is a really important point for everybody to understand about companies next year. It will be more disruptive coming out of the pandemic than it was going into the pandemic. Companies moved their entire employee base home within 3 days, 72 hours. Major companies like Booz Allen and Accenture, within 3 days, their entire employee groups, hundreds of thousands of people, were moved home. So everyone was home. That was it. It was like ripping a Band-Aid off, and they figured it out, got everybody up and running. Now it's going to be mass chaos. So how do you keep that focused, you guys? And so if you can talk into that, if you can talk into the focus, the regrouping, the people not getting resentful, adjusting to mass change, things changing from day to day while they're trying to, recover their revenue. If you can talk into that, so you want to hit human resources, you want to hit training and development, you want to hit corporate communications, you want to hit sales and marketing, and you want to hit the event planning group. Those are the key folks that you want to be talking to. And the last one are the CIOs. Chief information officers have very big budgets, and the rubber only meets the road when IT is involved. There's nothing that a company can do that the IT department doesn't. I mean, you can't even send holiday cards without the IT department involved. Okay. So IT touches everything. So CIOs are really the most strategic visionaries in most companies, and they have huge budgets. And they often have a budget to do huge offsites for their entire IT organizations and the major departments that they touch. So CIOs have untouched budgets by a lot of speakers. That always surprises me that speakers don't reach out to CIOs more often.
That's interesting, because early in my career, my career sort of got a little bit launched with the help of CIO magazine. I did 16 events for them almost a decade ago. Between 10 and 8 years ago, I did 16 events. And that spun off me speaking inside, 10 or 11 different companies to their IT departments about human engagement and human connection and their network. And people would be like, why would company brand X, why would their IT people care about people-to-people communication? And the CIO cared a lot that his team could do that.
They all do now. They all do. They have the loudest voice at the table other than the CFO. CFOs would be the other. But if you really think about who controls companies today, more than anything, it's the CEO, the CFO, and the CIO. And so the CIOs have the biggest challenge. Every new opportunity that a company wants to take advantage of goes through the IT department. These are strategists. These aren't like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with folks working on a help desk, but that's not IT. IT is not the help desk helping people who forgot their password for the 17th time this week, you know, get back into their computer, you know, or get their camera talking to their computer, a la me earlier, an hour ago. But the IT department, those are strategists. Those are the glue inside the company. They touch every department, every level. They touch customers, they touch investors, they touch vendors and suppliers. And so they're the ones that make the world go round. And so CIOs have to focus on mindset, strategy, engagement, productivity, conflict, inspiration, problem solving, creativity, collaboration, engagement, emotional intelligence, all of it, right?
So much.
There's so much going on in IT.
So much is going on in IT. And they have the budgets. They have the budget. Sales and marketing will have the budget. So you just have to be smart. And you want to go in through the doors that everyone else isn't going in through. If you're, my right outside my office, my last job in corporate, right outside my office was the head of our event department. And she would get boxes and boxes and boxes every week of, speaker, kits, right? And they would just pile up for her. When I got one in corporate communications, I was excited. I'm like, oh, what is this? And so to her, she's just like kind of kicking them down she was in her cubicle down the aisle. She had like the entire aisle of speaker boxes. Me, on the other hand, when I got a package, I was excited about it. I think you really have to think about not always, competing in the crowd, going in the door that's not used by everyone else. You could also be reaching out to the heads of engineering and manufacturing. You could reach out to the heads of procurement and supply chain who want to mobilize their suppliers and their vendors. Every department has a budget. And when you think about who is going to mobilize the recovery and taking advantage of growth, those are the decision makers you want to talk to. And a lot of times they plan their own experiences without even ever telling anybody in the corporate office that they're doing it. In fact, they often pride themselves in doing things their own way. And I think that goes back to understanding decision maker behavior. There's constant territory fights inside of companies, and they don't want to be told what to do. So they do it on their own. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for speakers. I think it's time to be very creative and innovative and persistent in outreach. But the bottom line is you've got 50% of companies that are going to be back to revenue next month, 2/3 by the summer. If you want to be out there speaking, there are opportunities to do it. And can I just add one more thing? Don't overlook, in the meantime, being willing to pop in and talk to a team for 15 minutes. Don't be willing, companies are getting their teams together over Zoom every week. And one of the big light bulb moments for decision makers this year was how easy it was to bring in outside experts for sort of a mini talk. And so if I were looking to revitalize my speaking in the first quarter of next year, I'd be doing a campaign around mini talks. Because it would grow my client list, and it would build relationships, and I would make sure there was always a little Q&A in there so I could find out exactly what was going on. And then I would come back and I would be pitching a higher paid keynote for their, first all hands meeting. They're going to have all hands meetings. They're going to have top leaders meetings. They're going to have top customer meetings. Yep. They're going to have sales boondoggles, right? It's all coming back. So get your butt out there. Can I say that word?
Yes, yes, you can.
And get your rear end out there and do a little hustle right now, because you want to be the speaker that they think about as they're bringing their people back and their customers back.
We do.
Angelique, every time I talk to you, I am blown away by the wealth of information you have about selling to companies and ways to get in. That whole part about all the different departments that a speaker or a consultant or any vendor could come through. I mean, everyone who listened to this, if they didn't write that down and start thinking of where is the side door, they missed like a huge information drop from you. So thank you
Yes,
so
they
much.
did.
Oh, you're
Thank
so
you.
welcome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so appreciative you shared your time here with us on the Webinar Talk Show. If somebody's listening and they're like, I need to hire this person, how do they find you?
Oh, our website is definitely the best place to go, thecorporateagent.com, thecorporateagent.com. And I'll also just mention our conference website is realdealevent.com, realdealevent.com. You can get on the priority notification list. We will be back in person in October in Fort Lauderdale. And we're very proud of that fact that we'll be doing in person in October.
Awesome. Well, we all look forward to wanting to be in Florida with you in October for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you for being with us. We really appreciate your just amazing information. And of course, you're just a delight to be with. So thank you for being with us.
My pleasure, you guys. Thank you for having me.
And we'll be back on Wednesday. Wednesday is our last one of 2020, Tom.
Oh, crazy. The last show of the second season, the last show of the year, and we are going to dissect what the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers did from pivoting from a large live event to a fully virtual event with both the president of the organization and the person who ran the conference. It is going to be, if you're in the event space, you can't miss it. In fact, you want to watch live, so it's not even old information.
Well, and it is an hour earlier because they're in a different time zone. So we will be at 10 o'clock a.m. on Wednesday Central Time instead of our regular 11 o'clock. Join us then. You can find us at webinartalkshow.com. To join us live, it's webinartalkshow.live. Angelique, again, one more time, thank you so much for being with us. And we'll see everybody on Wednesday. Have a great rest of your day.